I know many of you have used it and we are thrilled. The next slide, please. We are thrilled that Chuck Emery has again, and this is his third year that he has supported SCORE and has become our resident expert on QuickBooks. And as you can see from his background, he goes back with an accounting degree in management and working with UPS, as well as the COO and the CFO of a financial corporation. And now he does part-time consulting. So he keeps telling me that, hey, he's retired, but he'll be more than happy to help people set up QuickBooks or answer their questions as we go through. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chuck to start the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back again. First, we're going to talk about some of the benefits of QuickBooks. I always kind of like to get into that a little bit. Then we're going to set up a company file. That's where you do all your work within QuickBooks. And then once I show you the wizard, which is really easy to kind of just a couple of steps to set it up, then you got to go through and you got to customize it so you can actually use it to your benefit. So the benefits, all right. Now, everything we're going to be talking about today, everything we do is geared towards the desktop version of QuickBooks. QuickBooks has a number of desktop versions, and they have a number of online versions. QuickBooks is quickly sort of herding people more and more into the online version. All their development efforts are geared towards the online version. I don't particularly, I'm not a big fan of the online version. I mean, it does work, it's okay. To be fair, you know, I've been using the desktop version since around 94 or so. So yeah, I'm real used to that. And I don't feel that the online version has quite the benefits. And I always steer people towards the desktop version, unless you have a need to be accessing it remotely, or you have people in your business that need to access it remotely. I don't really see the benefits. But 2 years ago, not 2 years ago, last year in 2022, they went from a desktop version that you only really had to buy maybe once every 3 years before you started losing some of the external features like bank feeds, downloading credit cards, things along those lines. At about 300 a pop every 3 years. In 22, they forced everybody into an annual subscription program for $349 a year. In 23, they've upped that subscription program to $549 a year. And even at that, it's difficult to buy the Desktop Pro Plus version, which is the most common and the one most people need. You can't get it on their website anymore. You have to actually call in to their sales department. Now, anybody who's got to do that, I caution you, you're going to go first to an offshore representative that's really just talking to you from a script that they have. They don't really know anything about QuickBooks. And they're going to ask you a million questions, and they're going to try and slide you towards the online version before they finally send you to what they call a product support specialist. So I kind of went through that yesterday, as a matter of fact, got to the product support specialist, told them, you know, exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't looking to buy it, but I wanted to get a contact. I'm waiting for him to get back to me. If he says it's okay, I'll be posting his contact information on one of the slides that you're going to get. Because if you're on the desktop version, within the next year or two, or maybe even this year, you're going to be needing to upgrade to the subscription package, at least if you're using the download features. If you're not, you could stay with the package that you have. And as you see when we get into it, you'll see I work with a 2019 version, because the only thing I actually use QuickBooks today for is, aside from, you know, maybe doing some troubleshooting, is to send invoices out. Aside from that, I don't need any of the bank feed information, so I don't really, you know, need to purchase the new one. At any rate, there's my spiel on that. It's made for the non-accountant. It's very easy to use. The interface is very easy. If you want to write a check, you bring up a picture of a check. You want to make a deposit, you bring up a a picture of a deposit slip, basically, and you fill it out. Does about 80% of all the accounting as you pay your bills and record your deposits. You can download your credit card, your bank details, so you don't have to manually put that stuff in. Once you tell it the first time for a particular vendor where to post that transaction, what account to post it to, it remembers that for the future ones. So the more you use it, the less you actually have to fill out on every transaction. You don't need to pay your CPA to do your books. A lot of people do that, and it costs them quite a bit. Accurate financials make tax prep much easier, and your tax preparer's bill ought to reflect that because we all work based on time. If you outsource your bookkeeping, most firms are familiar with QuickBooks because QuickBooks has, I don't even know what the percentage is, but it's in excess of about 80% of the market share. It's the big guy on the block. All right, you can get up-to-date financial information at your fingertips for your loans, for credit lines, if you have bringing in a partner who wants to see your financials, for tax preparation. You can get all of this at your fingertips, assuming you're putting all the stuff in there correctly. It's very easy to run management reports to get these things. Your income statement, it's got a plethora of reports. But the most common ones that you'll use are your income statement, some also known as profit and loss statement, where you can see where you are this year, year to date versus last year, month to month trends, year to year trends. You can, if you're doing a budget, you can do budgeting in QuickBooks. You can see your accounts receivable. You can look at if you want to post your income and your expenses by job. Some contractors do that, especially home builders. There's profitability reports in there for that. You have customized billing capabilities. You can do estimates. You can do statements. Not many people do progress billing, but you can do progress billing. And that's where you create an estimate. Then if you're billing based on a percentage of that estimate as you go along on a job, this is what contractors sometimes do. You can very easily create that progress invoice without rekeying all this stuff in. Okay, this is, you're going to see this in a few minutes. This is basically what the home screen, once we customize it, is going to look like. And that's when you first get into QuickBooks. I put it on there just so that if you wanted to mimic this, if you were setting up a new company, you'd have some like of a template to look at. I put in here, there are a lot more functionality that could be put in here. I put in the stuff that I commonly see people use, and not everybody will use everything on here, but these are the more common functionality that I see that people will use. So I figured I'd create a slide for that. Okay, having said, let me see where I am here. Nope, that's right. All right, having said all of that, let me pull away from this. Let's bring up QuickBooks. Now, when you first log into QuickBooks, if you haven't already created a file, it's going to bring you to a screen that's going to sort of look like this. Now, please understand, I'm on the 19 version. Every version might look a little differently, but it's close enough to where you'll recognize this stuff. All right. I've already set it. We see the Chuck Emery QBW. That's my personally use. This new setup is the one that we're going to be working with. So what I'm going to do, though, is show you the steps to where you could get to that. But we don't have enough time within this, 1 hour presentation to fully customize it from scratch. So I already did it, but I'll show you the steps that were taken to get to where ultimately you'll see where we are. All right. So what you would do from here is you would just create a new company, or you could even come down if you don't see these icons. If you go to the file menu, you can create a new company right from here. All right. So we're going to hit that. Now, you would be hitting this icon for myself. I can't hit that one because I already have an Intuit account, and it's just going to bring me right back to my own company file. So I'm just going to say for somebody else. All right. Then I'm going to hit the start setup. And for some reason, it's been taking a good 30, 40 seconds for that screen to come up. So Karen, I don't know, do we have any questions out there? Or we use this sort of dead time?
No, not at this point, but and you may be saying this later, Chuck, but I cannot emphasize enough that if you are using QuickBooks, you need to make sure your setup is right. Otherwise, you're going to have difficulties down the road.
Yes,
And
yes.
whether that's trying to reconcile income, your bank account, invoicing, vendor payments, expenses. I've have a number of clients who did not set up QuickBooks properly. And unfortunately, 2 years in, we're still searching through things at this point. So
That's the biggest problem I come across, is that it was just set up wrong to start off with, and nothing makes any sense. I don't know why this thing is not coming up.
And Karen, let me say something real quick. If anyone has a question, please make sure you put it in the Q&A box. That way that Karen can see those questions. So everybody should be able to see that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll bring you to a blank screen here. What it might also bring you to is the Intuit logon, because you have to have an Intuit account. Now, it didn't bring me there, probably recognizes the fact that I already have one. It may bring you to an Intuit login account if you have an account, because you could set up multiple companies. You don't just have to have one company. I have clients that have 2 and 3 different companies all set up within QuickBooks. But you do have to have an Intuit account. So you'll either have to sign into that, or from that screen, you can create an Intuit account before it'll let you go any further. So I'm going to give it a business name of Workshop. It wants to know, see those red asterisks? That means these have to be filled out in order to get any further. I'm going to call it a general service based business type. And the only real importance, well, no, it is important. If you understand the different types of business, sole proprietor, a single member LLC, if you're an S corporation or a corporation, it then knows what your balance sheet accounts need to look like. So I'll pick the most common form that I come across, single member LLC. All right.
Just hold on for 1 second. We do have a few upfront questions. Can you set up more than one company in QuickBooks?
Yes, you can. In QuickBooks Desktop, you can. Online, you need a separate subscription for each company. That's another one of the downfalls of that. But yes, you can set up as many companies as you want in the desktop version.
What if you have QuickBooks already and believe it may be set up wrong?
Well, one or two paths. Either you get somebody like me to come in and see if we can straighten you out. It all really depends on how bad it is and what you've done wrong, and how far you are into it. I mean, the other way to go is if you're not too far into it, although we are midpoint of the year here, you could scratch it, reset it up, and input all the stuff from the beginning of the year. That's a lot of work. Depending on your problem, it may be big, it may be small.
Yeah, and
So if somebody wants to
follow
give
that
me a
one
call,
up.
I'm sorry, what?
There's a follow-up. Is it better to get our accountant to set up the QuickBooks, or should we be fine setting it up ourselves?
I think you're okay setting it up yourself. I never argue with letting your accountant do it, because there are things that without a little bit of an accounting knowledge, you're not going to understand, what to do. QuickBooks wants to make it sound like anybody can do this. And for the most part, anybody can. It's just a matter of what you come out the back end with. And it's not difficult to set it up. It doesn't take a lot of time. So your accountant could do it. I could do it. But it does have to be set up properly.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, and Chuck won't toot his own horn, but Chuck or another Chuck, let's put it this way, first would be a lot cheaper than your accountant at the end of the day, more expensive than a bookkeeper, but honestly, the time is well spent to get it set up right, or have someone like him look at what you've done and say, hey, all I need to do is tweak X, Y, and Z, and you're good to go. Or you know, you got a problem, which goes back to what Chuck said. Maybe you got to start all over from scratch, depending on the level of your volume at the end of the day. So setting it up front is so critical to your success and not having this issue. And then the last question, and we'll let you continue. During your setup, can you upload financial data from a previous year to create financial statements?
Upload data from a previous year. From where, though?
Yeah, they didn't say, you know, so I guess the question is if they want to do, you know, comparative financials, but the financials were elsewhere. You know, let's take Excel as an example. Can you upload from Excel to the financial statements? Do you know?
No, not really. You can upload customers, you can upload vendors, actual financial data from Excel. There might be some technicians out there that could handle that. It wouldn't be easy. You can import things if you have it like in Quicken or some program that might be compatible with QuickBooks. I've seen where you might be able to do that. I think you can do that.
Okay, I'll let you keep going because otherwise we'll be just keeping answering questions. I'm going to hold off on any future questions until Chuck gets a little bit further along.
Okay, yeah. If we hit a spot where you think the question blends in, we can do it. All right. So from here now, and can I go? I don't want to go back. On the previous screen, right down here, I forgot to mention it. There was a little button, and in that button, one of the options was the advanced setup, which I chose not to do because that goes through a ton of screens. And what it does is it allows you to enter customer data, vendor data, a bunch of different things during the setup process. For training, that's not great because once you've done that, you really won't know how to do it within the QuickBooks software itself. So I've chosen to take this easy way. I'm going to create the company. And then we're going to go in and actually create those things inside of QuickBooks, which I think is going to be more beneficial to you from a training perspective. Okay. So what you now have a QuickBooks file. This icon bar here is full of gems. What's this important notice? Okay, yeah. You'll see on mine this critical alert. It's been telling me that for the last 3 years. Basically saying to me that, listen, you're de-supported. There's there's things you can't do. I understand that. Those things that I can't do, I don't need to do at this stage in my life. If you are in a position where you're not downloading any of your credit cards or your checking information, you too might be in a position where you don't need to upgrade QuickBooks at all. So you really, before you just jump in there and get involved with the subscription program that you're now tied into each and every year, you got to determine whether you really need to go that route or not. I've had people do it when they didn't need to do it, and now they're sorry because you can't go back. All right. So that's the word of caution on that, no matter how disastrous they make this look. So let me get rid of that. So this is what you'd be looking like. This screen here comes up automatically. There's a way in the preferences, and I'll show you that in a little bit, to get rid of it. I don't particularly care for it. It makes me dizzy looking at it. But it does give you sort of a flow of work. Like, say, for instance, creating invoices. The next step would be to receive a payment. Makes sense. The next step after that would be to record the deposits. I don't know, it makes me dizzy. It's probably me. This icon bar that they've given us, or call it a shortcut bar, is loaded with things that you don't need. So what we're going to do, rather than me trying to clean this whole thing out and put the stuff in there that we need, we're going to get rid of this file. And we're going to new company. And we're going to go to the one. Whoops. Nope. That's not what I wanted to do. Can I get out of that? Yeah, I can. That's not what I wanted to do. I want to open up a previous company. And the company that I'm going to open up is what I call new setup, which is exactly what you were looking at, except it's been customized to what that slide in the PowerPoint presentation showed. And you might say, well, how am I going to figure out if you did it all? Because we're going to redo some of these, but I don't have to redo everything because it's all repetitive. All right. So anyway, these are the icons that I find the most useful. And all these are what you call shortcuts, because you can get to any place within QuickBooks just by going through the menu choices. But as you can see, there's quite a few menu choices, and you kind of got to know where everything lives in order to get to it. All right. So, and we'll do a little bit of that. But let's say, how would we customize this icon bar? You can either hit customize shortcuts down here, or you can just right click anywhere and come a little sub menu and get to the same place. The first thing you would wind up doing on the canned version is you'd be getting rid of some of the things that you don't want. And that's why I put the put this picture right here into the slide presentation, so you can see what at least I think it is that you really need to operate your business smoothly from a bookkeeping perspective. So let's just say we didn't want customers. I would highlight it, delete it. I don't want vendors. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to delete it. Say OK. And if you notice, they were up here. Now they're gone. That's how you would get rid of the things that you don't want. Well, how do you add things then? All right, so let's go back to customize shortcuts. And why don't we just add those two back in? If you hit the add button here, it gives you a list, quite an extensive list of all the different icons that could be put on there. And one of the things that's always amazed me, there are a handful of very common functions that they don't put in this list, but there's a way to get them too. So let's go for a couple that we just got rid of, because they are in here. Customers, that was the first one I got rid of. Say OK, and if you notice, there it is. But it's not where I wanted it. All right, so all I got to do, if I just come to the little diamond and bring it up there, as you can see, there it is. All right. So the second one I let go of was vendors, and that's all the way down towards the bottom over here. Right there. I'm gonna say OK. Vendor shows up. Well, for some reason, vendor showed up right where I wanted it to. Usually shows up down at the bottom. Don't ask me, no questions about that one, because I have no clue. Anyway, but there it is. But wherever it showed up, you can just drag it and put it wherever you want it. And this order right here is my own personal preference. It's not like it has to be in this order. You can have it anywhere you want. But I'm a little anal with some of this stuff. So I kind of like to have my lists, what we're called first, my customer list, my vendors, my accounts, my items. Then I usually have my what they call activities in QuickBooks: creating an invoice, receiving a payment, making a deposit, writing a check, entering a bill, paying a bill. And then there's miscellaneous things down here. That's just my own personal preference. All right. Now,
Doc, a quick question. Can you transfer data from a Pro 2012 into a new desktop version?
Pro 2012. I would give it a shot. All right, because there is import functionality. Can I get to it from here? I'll tell you what, give me a sec. If you go to File, Utilities, you can import. See this IIF files, those QuickBook files, QuickBook import, export files. So the functionality is there. The only word of caution, and that's why I caution people not to let their QuickBooks get that old. Between 2012 and now, it's possible that they changed the architecture of the software enough to where you can't. And you won't know it unless you try it. But if you can run through that, I'll do it again. File, utilities, import. Now, you'd have to go to your 2012 first, obviously, hit export and lists. You can export lists to IIF files. If I hit that, it's just going to bring me customer list. It's going to bring me the various lists. Pick the one you want, create the IIF files, and then go back into your new version and try the import. And if they haven't changed the architecture too much, then it'll take it. If it does, you won't. I've been able to do it in some. There are some that I wasn't able to do it. So between 12 and 23, I can't tell you specifically.
Another comment more from another participant. The 2012 question may require going through the process of various years to get current. Had one like this, took 3 different years of upgrading to get current. So
that's
it's just some obviously
that's a
useful
good
information.
possibility. That's a good possibility. And again, I don't recommend people, well, this is an old recommendation because you can't do it anymore, but I used to tell people, don't go past 3 years before you upgrade. And it's cheap enough. I mean, sometimes you can find this thing at before they went to the subscription version, you can find this thing in Costco for like 150, $200, and it's worth every 3 years doing it. Now, again, I don't want to go back through that whole thing. Once you get involved in the subscription, it's every year. All right. So there are some of these activities that they don't have in that list. This list here I'm sorry, not that list. This list here, they just don't exist. Don't know why, because they're commonly used. But what they do give you is another way to do it. All right. Let's say, for instance, I want to create a deposit window. All right. That's what a deposit window looks like. I don't have it on my list, though. So how do I get it there? Well, if I go to the menu, which is under banking, make deposits, I open up a deposit window. All right. Make it a little bigger. If you go into view, add make deposits to the icon bar, say, okay, there it is. Puts it on the bottom. All right. Again, all I got to do is customize it and drag it up to where I want it. But as we know, I already have one there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to delete it. I don't want it again. All right. So the ones that you don't find, which I think are going to be the receive payment, make deposit, pay bills, pretty sure those are the ones that you have to do. Now, the other way some people do this is rather than creating this icon bar right from the get-go, like we're doing right now, they'll go through and learn where things are, all right, in the menu choice. And then the windows that they find, or the activities and lists that they find that they're using on a recurring basis, then you do it. So again, make deposit. I find out, listen, every day I'm making deposits. So that would be a good thing, right? So why don't I just create a shortcut for it? And I would do it right there. You can do that for almost any open window, not 100% of them, but almost all of them. Any window that you have open, you can add to your icon bar. All right, so that's just another way to go through it. So, any more questions yet, Karen?
No, you're good.
All right. All right, now, once we have what we have here, the one functionality that didn't avail itself when we were going through the little wizard to get us to a company file was the ability to add things, all right? But we're going to do that here within the QuickBooks file itself. So customers. So what I would do is I'll just hit customers. Customer window opens up. Now, I got a number of different ways I could do this. I could just come right in here, right click anywhere, say new customer, and just fill out the fields. The customer name is the way you'd want to see it on the list, the pick list that QuickBooks is going to present to you. So Chuck's customer 1. All right. I hit that. All right. You put the name. All right. It copies itself down here. If I'm mailing invoices, that's where I put the address. You can just then, none of this stuff is mandatory. You can fill out any of the information in here that you want for that customer. This is not the class we're going to be talking about, setting up sales tax and things like that. That's, I think, the next class when we're talking about invoicing. But at any rate, once you've set up the sales tax functionality, you can tell the system whether this customer is exempt from sales tax or not. It might be a nonprofit, might be a reseller, whatever it might be. So, so the QuickBooks doesn't automatically calculate sales tax on an invoice. Gives you some additional information. I don't really see people doing much of this, but you can segregate your customers by different types if that's of any benefit to you. There's some job info that you can put in there. Again, I don't really see many people using this stuff. It's basically the general information. You can put credit card information if you're accepting credit cards, because you can latch into QuickBooks Point of Sale, which, by the way, for desktop, they're doing away with. I think it's in October. So if you've got QuickBooks Point of Sale linked in with your QuickBooks and you're accepting credit cards through that, you might want to, if you don't already know about it, you should have gotten a notification. You might want to start thinking about doing something about it. So based on that, it sets up a customer. Another way I can set up a customer, and a lot of people do this, is on the fly. Let's say I'm writing a check to somebody. All right. And I want to do Chuck's customer. If you notice, Chuck's customer 1 already started coming up because it recognized it. But let's just say it's a different person. All right. Yeah, that's good enough. And I hit enter or tab, to move to the next field. All of a sudden it says, hey, it's not on the list. What do you want to do? Well, I could set it up from scratch right here. But if I'm not putting all of that information in because I email my invoices and I don't really need a whole lot of information, I could do a quick add. I just tell it it's a vendor, say, okay, write the check to the person. Do I have to save? Yeah, I'm going to have to save the check. So, well, let's see. Cannot record a blank transaction. Okay. Let's pay Chuck $1. You must assign an account. All right. Office supplies for $1. That's how easy it is to write a check. Now, obviously, if I'm sending checks out and I'm writing them through QuickBooks, I'm going to want the address in there. So I wouldn't have used a quick add. I would have put the customer's information in there. All right. But for demonstration purposes, that's odd. Didn't come back in. I wonder why. Let's see. I think what happened there, I overwrote Chuck's customer 1 with Chuck's customer 2. I actually changed their name. I was expecting to see both of them in there. But anyway, that's another way that you can actually add a customer. If you have some technical savvy, all right, you can go into lists and you can add multiple customers in one shot. And there's Chuck's customer 1 again. What you would do here is, if you are able to export from whatever system you have or your customers into an Excel spreadsheet, you can then copy and paste that Excel spreadsheet. As long as you've set the Excel spreadsheet up in the same format as this, you can copy and paste right into here all of your customers. So just another way to do it. All right, vendors. Vendors works exactly the same way. Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. That second customer I set up, I should have said Chuck's vendor, not Chuck's customer, because that was a vendor I set up. That's why I didn't see it on the customer list. He's right here. All right. And under customers, all I have is Chuck's customer one. That's what it is. So I misspoke. I set it up as a vendor. Vendors get set up. As a matter of fact, the screen looks exactly the same way. Vendors get set up exactly the same way as customers. Hit a new vendor. Screen looks the same. Put the information in, and you've got yourself a vendor list. What I see most people doing is actually doing it on what they call on the fly. As you create a transaction, you can set the customer up there. And again, it's just a matter of preference. Some people like to just get it done all up front, so they're not interfering when they're actually doing their processing. Some people would rather do it as they process. Totally up to you. Okay, account. This is what you call your chart of accounts. Now, QuickBooks brings this in. If you remember when we were doing the setup, the wizard, it asked us what kind of business we had. And based on that business, it gives you sort of a generic chart of accounts. You may not use them all. You may use some other ones other than that. Some people will say, well, how do I know, what I want to use? A good place to go is to last year's tax return and see what your accountant has put in there and sort of mimic that. So what you can do is, let's take one over here. Let's say contracted services. Well, I don't need contracted services. So all I got to do is say delete. Contracted services is gone. Let's say I do have contracted services, but yet it's not in my chart of accounts. Then all I got to do is right click again, say new, or get out of here. You can go down and do the activities too. I'm sorry, not the activities, and the account button. All right, edit, delete, new. QuickBooks gives you 2-3 different ways to do almost anything. I've just gotten used to the right click, which brings up a sub menu. I'm going to create a new account. It's an expense account. Okay. Now, those of you who were in our class, which was in March, I believe, we did a little bit of an accounting 101. And the reason we did that is hopefully if you understand just a little bit about the basic accounting, you understand what's in a balance sheet, what's on a profit and loss statement. These are the things that if you don't have any bookkeeping or accounting experience, where you're going to struggle with. All right. So this is an expense account that we're going to want to create. So I continue. Whoa. Okay. It said it was going to be contracted services. As you can tell, I don't type all that well. And I save and close, and there it is. It's right there.
Yeah, the comment that Chuck just made regarding, accounting 101, one of the biggest challenges we see as SCORE mentors is that the business owner is very good at whatever the service or product that they are delivering to that. But, their eyes glaze over when you start talking about, what's an asset, what's a liability, what's an income statement, and what's an expense account. Highly encourage anyone who, if you don't have someone in your family who can help you, to obviously get help or take a basic accounting class. There are many out there at the end of the day. Or actually, reach out to a SCORE mentor who can walk you through these things. But if you don't understand, this is where I have clients that have gotten themselves in trouble because they've sort of classified things all over the place, and it's very difficult to unwind.
Yes.
And
Now,
Someone just asked if they could get a copy of the 101 program for March. It's actually the basic QuickBooks workshop, but I'm sure Ellen can obviously send that to you and you can go through and see how Chuck went through T accounts and all that
Right.
other fun information.
Now, Ellen, Karen, we're going to have a few minutes because I'm close to the end. Um, I don't have anything to put up here, but I think I could spend a few minutes at least talk about balance sheet, income statement, that type of thing. That might kind of help some people because
That might help some people if we have the time. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we will. I'm going to kind of go through it right now because that's where we are. So here it comes. You know, the very first decision I got to make when I'm setting up a new account, is it an income account? Is it an expense account? Is it a fixed asset, a bank, a loan, credit card, equity? Two main reporting concepts in accounting. You have your balance sheet, which is nothing more that's just defined as a statement of financial position as of a certain period in time. And all that really means is a balance sheet shows what your assets are, what your which are the things you own, what your liabilities are, which are the things that you owe, and what your equity in the business is, which is what's your piece of it. And I like to sort of liken that to your house. Think about it. Your house is your asset. Your mortgage, if you have one, that's your liability. The difference between your asset and your liability is the net worth of your house, or in other words, the equity. It's really that simple. It can get a hell of a lot more complicated, but when you get right down to it, assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity, or another way of saying it is assets, the house, minus liabilities, the mortgage, equals your equity. All right. So those are your balance sheet accounts. Those are your cash, or your checking accounts, savings accounts. It's your accounts receivable, the things that the money people owe you. Your liability. I'm sorry, your fixed assets, things like vehicles, big things like that. Your liabilities, your accounts payable, that's money you owe to people. Your credit card payable. That's, you know, you're accruing that credit card debt as you go along each month, all right? And then the equity is just the money that you've put into the business, your net income, cumulatively speaking, less any money that you've taken out of the business, all right? So in making that decision, we talked about contracted services, that's an expense. And most of the things you're going to add in is either going to be income or expense. And I think that's about as far as I can get into that right now.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to people when they think about how to set up, think about the information you want to have. So if you're looking at income, income can be one line item. Okay, this is what I got paid for, you know, let's take landscaping services as an example. Okay, I do landscaping and I build, you know, $100 and it's my income. Or when you look at income, do you want to see the different ways you make income? Okay, I get $100, but I only cut grass. I did some plantings and I charged $200 for that. I did some hardscape landscaping. I charged $1,000 for that. So your income categories as your expenses should reflect the information you want to see at the end of the month, or whenever you look at your financials to say, hey, where did I make money this month? So that's where it's critical for you to sort of think in advance before you set this up. Otherwise, you're stuck with one little income account that may not tell you, and you now have to go through every single invoice to say, oh, well, where did this come from at the end of the day?
Right.
And the same thing for expenses too. So if you set up like one advertising account, you know, you may want to see the difference between, you know, I put a, you know, ad in a newspaper versus an ad on social media versus, you know, whatever at the end of the day. Think about the information you want to see that are going to help you. We do have two questions, Chuck, right now.
Sure.
Will you be doing a workshop on payroll and QuickBooks, particularly the manual payroll?
No, I highly dissuade people from doing their own payroll. Because especially the manual payroll, because if you're doing that, well, somebody's got to do your payroll taxes once a quarter. And I used to train people on that, and it just wasn't very successful because of the infrequency of doing it from one quarter to the next. People couldn't remember, how to go about doing it. Plus, if you make a mistake, very, very difficult to come back from.
Mhm.
So, and the payroll services that are out there are so inexpensive that it just makes a whole lot of sense to let them do it. And then I could show you how to make the entries to capture the payroll expense and the payroll tax expense from what they produce. Let them do the work.
Yeah, I second that what Chuck just said. If you do your payroll, you are liable if you don't pay your taxes on time. If you do it incorrectly, you will then have to pay penalties, potential interest, and the like. If you hire someone, and the first people I would probably talk to is go to your bank. Almost every bank has a relationship with a payroll servicer, whether that's ADP, Paycheck, or some other firm that's obviously in your local area. They are as low as $50 a month to do payroll. Consider it an insurance policy that if anything gets screwed up, they will pay for it, not you. And they will have the experts and have it on their schedule to say, okay, the quarterly tax is due on the 15th or whatever is due here. And then if you start getting more sophisticated and taking out, whether it's loan payments or other things or 401k or contributions, they've got it all set up. You don't need the headache at the end of the day. The second question, I was unable to link my bank account to QuickBooks Enterprise. I have never had a problem in the past when I had QuickBook Pro, nor QuickBook Online. Please advise what may be the issue.
Welcome to my world. A lot of the banks today, and now QuickBooks has changed the architecture of how the bank feeds work. And I actually have a client right now to where the Amex link stopped working because of that. And I cannot get it to work. We've called QuickBooks, we've called Amex, and nobody's of much help. So I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to give you a magic answer on that. I can give you a couple of the general things that have worked for me in the past. The way things are working today, some of the banks, including Amex, you have to register with them first in order for them to accept the ability to have a download into QuickBooks. And it's all a function of all the scams that are out there today. They're really locking this stuff down. Trying to think of some of the other. That's really been when I've had a problem. That's really been the biggest thing right there. The second thing, I suppose, was that if you can't get it to link through QuickBooks, make sure go in online directly into that bank with those same credentials that you're telling QuickBooks to use, and make sure that you can get in. All right. Sometimes there's a warning screen that comes up with the bank that QuickBooks can't get through, and you need to log in directly to get rid of that. But like I said, I do have one case that I have unable to, I've been unable to successfully get it to download. What I've done for them, at least temporarily, because I haven't given up on it yet, is you can go directly onto pretty much any bank's site and create a download file right from the bank that QuickBooks will take. But if you're looking for that link where you do it right from QuickBooks to communicate with the bank, there might become an issue.
That's it on the question. So I don't know if you have anything to wrap up at this point.
All right, just the last one here was the item. We didn't go through the item list. All right, what items are? Items are what drive invoices. All right, In other words, to create an invoice, you have to tell it what the item is, all right? Items would be, let's just say for a general contractor, maybe I just break my, invoice down between material and labor. Well, I would have a material, item. Again, I'm just going to right click, new, and you got all these different, it's basically a non-inventory part. Stay away from inventory. Do not use, well, okay, my version of QuickBooks doesn't even give me inventory, but if yours does, stay away from inventory. Inventory accounting is very complicated. You don't need it, all right? There's ways around that. And it's a little too complicated to explain right here and now. But if you want to give me a call, we can, or email me. I can get a little deeper into that. But anyway, let's say material is an item. I could put a description that I want and to kick out on the invoice. What I have to tell it is where I want that, what income. And as you can see, my income accounts here from an accounting practice. Just for, for a contractor, you would probably just have sales or material sales or whatever it might be. Let's just make believe that that's what that said. So when I use the item material, I wanted to populate my profit and loss statement into this account right here. I hit OK. Okay, let me get rid of all this stuff. All right. So now, when I create an invoice and I hit material, up comes the gibberish that I keyed in there. I could have put a rate in that other screen, which I didn't do. You put the rate in, you can put the quantity, you can free form type whatever else you want to type in here, all right, to the customer. Then maybe I do labor separately and you can do it right from here, just like I told you on the other activities. Let's just say I want to use labor. Whoops, no, I didn't. It's in the wrong field. Again, that's a service, all right? The item is labor. Again, I can put whatever I want in there. And again, I don't typo, so that's as good as we're going to do. Maybe my labor rate is $50 an hour. I'm just going to put it to consulting income again. Say okay. And it actually does it right on the fly in the invoice. And if I put a quantity in there, maybe it was 20 hours. Says the customer field can't be blank. Well, that's fine, because I do have to say who the customer is. Chuck's customer 1 from that list that we created before. And now I have an invoice for $1,000. Again, we're not in an invoicing class, but I would have had to say whether it was taxable, non-taxable, that type of thing. But that's how you would create a label. That's 2 different ways to create items. I'm gonna get out of here. Whoops, I can't. I'll just save it.
Okay, Chuck, we're running into the last 5 minutes of the session.
Right. Well, I'll be honest with you, I am pretty much done. So let's.
Are there any last minute questions? Because before we do our wrap up slides at this point from anyone in the audience. Yeah, looks like so someone just made a comment for just a thank you. I am both a SCORE mentor and have a bookkeeping business. I do not like the online version, and your down-to-earth explanation was helpful. So,
oh, thank you.
So why don't we just wrap up now?
Okay, key takeaways. Different versions may look a little different, but they all work the same way. Pro Plus is not on the Intuit website. They start with Pro Premier at about $750. Unless you have a specific need, you don't need that one. Call sales. I am trying to get a direct line And if I can get it, it's going to be on the slide before Ellen sends them out. Save your Intuit credentials when you do have to log in, because I can't tell you how many people I've come across and we get to that point and they have no idea what they are. Create icons for common tasks. That's what we were just doing. There's under the edit, we didn't get to do this. Under the edit menu, there's preferences. And there's a plethora of preferences that you can kind of go through to customize your QuickBooks file just a little bit more than what we did. Set up your chart of accounts, your items, your customers, your vendors. That's all the stuff that we did. And some resources, QuickBooks for Dummies. You can do a Google search on Learn QuickBooks, set up a QuickBooks company file. Just for grins, if you want to see a comparison of the different online versions that are out there, if you choose to go down that road, you can hit this link. QuickBooks sales. This is one of the many sales numbers they have. It's going to get you to that offshore. If you know what you want the QuickBooks Pro Plus, just keep repeating that. Just dissuade them from all of their questions, and eventually you'll get to a product support specialist. If I can get a name and a direct line in there, I'm going to update the slide with that. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Chuck. Much appreciated. I don't see any other questions, so let's just do the wrap-up slides. Next one. So obviously this is the second of the series. The first one was the Accounting 101 and entries with QuickBooks. On September, we're doing the invoicing and invoice customization, if you would like to join us. And we're going to wrap up for reporting and report customization, hopefully just in time to get your tax return organized for your accountant or whoever files your taxes. Next slide, please. We also have a social media obviously series. We have done 2 already, but obviously coming up is cultivating your engaged community for social media, public relations, and how to build a strategic approach to your social media content versus, oh, I've got a post today. But, you know, obviously they'll talk about maintaining calendars and the like. Next slide. We're thrilled to have Burr and Foreman as one of our workshop, obviously, partners, and they have agreed to do, we've had one, you know, we talk about copyrights and do you need to protect your business and patents. Please join us on the next 2. We also have a veteran series popping up. It's a continuation. We had 2 already, but and again, you don't have to be a veteran. So one will be social media and marketing. The other will be funding directly. So if you're looking potentially at an SBA loan, William Furman will be doing that. And then we'll be talking about our sponsor is Bank of America, talking about personal credit and small business lending and how, and it's not going to be specific to them, but how do you work with your bank? Next one, next slide. We also have a nonprofit series that's about to kick off in September. So if you or anyone you know has a nonprofit, we will be doing a myriad of topics, including, you know, how to start a nonprofit, volunteer management, board management, social media specific to nonprofits, as well as grant writing and fundraising strategies. Next slide. And again, I've mentioned it before, if you need help, it is a free and confidential, and we are local. So for those of you who are listening who may not be part of Low Country, or we are geographically based, there are over 220 chapters of SCORE throughout the United States. You put in your zip code when you request a mentor, and someone who understands your business will be in touch. Next slide. If you want to volunteer with us, at the end of the day, please, we are always looking for people, not just to mentor, but to do workshops like this, graphic designers, social media. In particular, we are looking for people who are Spanish speaking, who could help us reach out to the Hispanic market. Next slide. And with that, here are all our social medias. Please follow us. This is where we post all our workshops and the like. So please do that. And the last slide is we are a resource partner of the SBA, but I will ask you to please fill in your questionnaire. I know there were a couple of questions on Accounting 101. So if you would like us to do an Accounting 101 class just for the basics, not with QuickBooks, but just in general, please let us know. We've done them in the past, and we have a whole repertoire of presentations that we can pull out and present to you. And with that, Thank you, Chuck, for joining us. Thanks to obviously our people attending, and I look forward to seeing you on our next one. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everybody.